It was a quiet dawn, the kind of morning when the world itself seems to hold its breath. A thin veil of mist still clung to the porch of the small wooden house, softening every outline and making even the humblest scene appear tender and timeless. Inside, James slept peacefully. His breathing was steady, his face serene, almost childlike. Beside him lay little Nhi, spirited yet gentle, nestled beneath a thin blanket. Her tiny hands were tucked close to her chest, strands of hair scattered carelessly across the pillow. The silence inside was broken only by the faint crow of a rooster in the far distance, mingling with the light patter of rain on the corrugated roof. Out in the kitchen, Diep was already awake. She crouched low by the fire, coaxing flames from smoldering embers. Every breath she blew into the fire was a quiet act of devotion, the crackle of wood mixing with the sharp tang of smoke. On the stove, water had just begun to boil, steam curling into the dim air and blurring her small, determined eyes. That morning, breakfast was no more than instant noodles. Yet in her hands, it became something else, an offering, a symbol of care. She wanted James and little Nhi to wake not to hunger, but to warmth. She tiptoed back toward the room, intent on waking James. But when she saw him and Nhi still asleep, faces calm and untroubled, her heart softened. She simply smiled. To disturb them felt unthinkable. In that fragile moment, watching them sleep was like gazing at a rare painting of serenity, a fleeting treasure in a life so often storm-tossed. With a tender gesture, she brushed a lock of hair from Ni's forehead, then slipped away again. Moments later, James stirred. Light crept through the wooden cracks, nudging him awake. Carefully he tucked the blanket over Nhi, then rose. On the porch, he found Diep bent over the fire, her green cotton shirt marked with smoke, her hands moving with patient rhythm as she prepared noodles. He paused, his chest swelling with quiet warmth. When he softly called her name, she looked up in surprise and smiled. A smile so pure it lit the entire morning. They sat together at a small bamboo table. Steam from their bowls curled upward, blurring their faces, making the intimacy feel almost dreamlike. The meal was simple, just noodles, a few jars of seasoning, and an old teapot. Yet in its simplicity lay a richness that words barely captured. They ate slowly, speaking of ordinary things, household tasks, small details of the day ahead. But every word was buoyant with joy. James teased her lightly, just to see her cheeks flush. Her eyes sparkled each time she glanced at him. At one point, she lifted noodles toward him, and after a moment's hesitation, he leaned forward and accepted the bite. They both laughed, their voices weaving with the soft rhythm of falling rain. Happiness, James thought, could truly be this simple. Not wealth, not grandeur, but a bowl of noodles, a little laughter, and the gentle company of someone who mattered. When breakfast ended, James hesitated before speaking. He told her he needed to return home to handle pressing matters. For a brief second, Diep's heart tightened. But she did not let sorrow rise to the surface. She only smiled, soft, unwavering, brighter even than the morning sun. Her smile carried no reproach, only grace. James reached for her hand and held it briefly before stepping away. He felt gratitude swell within him. Gratitude for her strength, her patience, and her quiet, unshakable presence. Inside that modest wooden house, the memory of their morning lingered. The laughter, the warmth of steam, the shared glances. For both, it would remain a moment impossible to forget, the orchard of innocence. With James gone, Diep shouldered a woven basket and took Nhi by the hand. Together, they followed a narrow path toward the guava orchard. Morning sunlight pierced through the leaves in scattered gold, dappling their path with life. Nhi bounced ahead in her green rubber boots, flecked with mud. Her eyes glowed with delight, her laughter ringing clear in the air. By the time they reached the orchard, the trees were alive with fruit, branches bowed heavy with green and golden guavas, their fragrance sweet in the breeze. Diep tied back her hair, rolled up her sleeves, and began her work. Nhi, eager to help, wore a small basket strapped to her chest. She darted from branch to branch, too small to reach the higher ones but unstoppable in her determination. Each fruit she plucked, she brought proudly to Diep, her triumphs announced with laughter. Sometimes her clumsy little hands fumbled, sending guavas tumbling to the ground. But she never gave up. She simply dusted each one off and tucked it into her basket, her face shining with resolve. Soon, both baskets brimmed with fruit, their skins glowing under the sun. Diep adjusted her straps, then bent to help Nhi with her smaller load. Though heavy for such a little girl, Nhi carried it with pride, walking tall beside her aunt. For her, it was not a burden but a victory. The sun climbed higher, weaving shifting patterns of light across their path. They paused beneath a wide tree, resting in its shade. At one point, Nhi sank her teeth into a ripe guava, juice spilling down her chin. She giggled, sticky and delighted. Diep laughed with her, the sound soft and melodious, carried on the orchard breeze. When the baskets were finally full, they began the walk home. Their steps were slow, weighed down by guavas, but their spirits were light. The road back shimmered under golden light, and faint sounds of the market drifted on the wind. What could have been a chore had become a cherished memory, a bond deepened, love made visible in each step and smile. Building a home. Elsewhere, on the edge of the mountains, men labored on the skeleton of a house. Under the shade of bamboo, the supervisor watched with sharp eyes. His voice carried across the quiet hills, firm, commanding, yet filled with care. It was time to roof the structure, and precision was everything. Workers balanced high on beams, hands steady, passing planks and tiles in a practiced rhythm. Each piece fit into place with measured care, their teamwork smooth as a well-oiled machine. Sweat dripped from their brows, uniforms soaked, but not one man complained. Be careful. Grip firm, quick, but safe, the supervisor called out. His words sounded strict, but beneath them lay genuine concern. He knew one slip could mean disaster. The valley echoed with hammer strikes, the creak of wood, the murmur of wind. Together, they pressed forward, tired, but resolute. When at last the supervisor called for a break, the men gathered in the bamboo's shade. They shared tea from chipped cups, laughter rising to dissolve fatigue. Camaraderie strengthened them, and soon they were back at work. By midday, the roof had begun to take form, tiles laid in precise rows. The sky stretched blue above them, sunlight glinting off beads of sweat. No one faltered. They built not just a house, but a future, something strong, safe, enduring. And in their unity, under the watchful eye of their leader, their labor became more than survival. It became pride.